Defense and AI stocks, they're in the limelight, and the CEO of the ASX darling DroneShield, Oleg, is with us. Oleg, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Jessica.
So for those that don't know, there's been a huge push by NATO, pushing countries to spend over 2% of their GDP on defense spending. And your company has been a huge beneficiary of that. I mean, just in the past year, your shares are up 335%, so well done. But let's say we just met in a lift. For new investors, can you give us a 60-second elevator pitch?
DroneShield makes systems that detect and stop drones used for nefarious applications, such as Russian drone attacks in Ukraine, or in a civilian context, criminals delivering contraband to prisons or conducting terrorist attacks using small drones.
Nice. So for those that don't know, you've got a high caliber of quality clients. Some of your clients include the US government, Australian government, many other governments around the world. But you recently inked a deal with NATO. Why should someone consider investing in the company right now?
DroneShield is at a unique inflection point. We have seen several years of customers testing various counter-drone solutions. Keep in mind that it's a brand new industry. So small drones really only existed for the last decade or so, and counter-drone solutions are even newer than that. So now we're seeing a lot of customers saying small drones are a huge problem. We're seeing this in Ukraine and other places in civilian situations. But at the same time, nobody has nowhere near enough counter-drone systems. So over the last several years, a lot of our end users have conducted testing and evaluations, and then started to award framework agreements for streamlined acquisitions, such as the NATO framework agreement you mentioned. And now is the time, we believe, for mass procurement. So this should lead to, hopefully, significantly increased orders over time from us as well as other counter-drone companies, as the end users seek to build up significant or adequate for them amount of counter-drone systems.
I do want to get to that, future contracts, etc., and what's in the pipeline. But I just really have to point out that your shares did have a phenomenal run. Initially, at one point, they were up 635% this year. You hit about $2.72. And then in mid-July, your shares pulled back some 45%. And as at yesterday's close, I believe they were just a touch at $1.48, if we round. What can you tell us is happening? So why that sharp pullback of 45%?
There's been no fundamental news or change of facts that the company has released over the last month, Jessica. The only things we can point to are Capital Brief report with a short seller, which I think a lot of our new investors, perhaps not as familiar with the story, have then looked at and then decided to sell the shares. But as you know, this week we have released our quarterly report with preview into our half-annual results. We have revealed our all-time record half-year revenues, all-time record half-year cash receipts. So I believe the company is continuing to perform really strongly, and we'll look forward to continue driving the business.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we see a company's, I guess, director and a founder pull out, I guess I'm pointing to an ASX announcement that said that you sold down your shares. I guess people are trying to put two and two together. They saw your shares pull back 45%, and they're digging through the ASX announcements. They saw that your results were better than expected. You're inking more customers. Heck, you even inked that deal with NATO. So things are really good. So I guess naturally people are going to scratch beneath the surface and ask questions, has Oleg lost conviction in the company? So for those that don't really understand, you haven't completely sold out of your positions, even though it looks on the ASX record that you have sold out. Just tell us about that.
So firstly, like you said, I have significant 15 million performance options position remaining. Those will convert to shares when the company reaches $200 million in revenues or cash receipts. In terms of the timing of my share sales, so this was done in March, well before a lot of this positive news came out. The primary reason was I was looking to buy home in Sydney to live in, and this was the drive. So I'm still highly incentivized with the performance options that I still hold, and DroneShield is the first thing I think about when I wake up, and probably the last thing I think about before I go to bed.
And many people who've got shares in your company would be thinking the same thing. And for those who aren't invested, they probably have been waiting for this time, I guess, to maybe pull, to wait for a pullback to buy into the dip. But let's just go back to what you're talking about, inking those new collaborations, that key pivotal deal with NATO, which we've never seen in NATO's history. We've never seen a drone company ink a deal with NATO. Pretty significant stuff for those who are unaware. So well done. So your moat is pretty huge. How big is the company's fortress? I mean, are there any other potential, players, competitors? And when are we going to see more detail in this NATO deal?
On other competitors, there are increasing amount of companies in the market as it becomes a red hot space. However, we have a number of unique differentiators. I put them as technical and commercial. Technical, we've been in the space for a decade now. We have a team of approximately 115 engineers out of a team of 150, hardware, software, all of the IP that we sell, we develop ourselves. The only things we offer, which we don't fully build from scratch, are radars and cameras, which are secondary technologies to DroneShield in any case, although we do software behind even those two technologies. And over the last 10 years, we have assembled a number of really unique artificial intelligence techniques, including the data behind our artificial intelligence engines in about 70 countries where we operate. So that means we can detect nefarious drones further, we can see them more accurately, track them, we can defeat them more effectively compared to the others, and also we can continue advancing our technology. So every quarter we do software updates to our artificial intelligence engines that our customers receive. Every couple of years we do hardware refreshes. So it's very hard for somebody else to jump into that. Defense primes, contrary to what a lot of people think, are actually our customers, not competitors. They are slow in how they move. They're unable to go at the speed like the fast companies such as DroneShield operates. So instead, they actually purchase from us when government often makes large purchases using the funding vehicles that defense primes operate. Second very important advantage is commercial. So over the years, we have established trusted relationships with tier one customers such as US, UK, and Australian military and law enforcement agencies, intelligence community, and so on. And when they encounter new and unusual drone techniques, our devices are actually able to record those drones, their radio frequency signatures, and then that data to be sent to us to train our artificial intelligence engines. So we can see those new and emerging drone threats really quickly and cycle them into our technology really fast and build our products accordingly. So technology and commercial advantages are quite unique in that sense. And the other thing I would say is that we're global, right? So we're finding a lot of our competitors tend to be regional. While DroneShield based in Australia, we said we have to be an export business from day one.
So speaking about that export business, can you actually split up the revenue makeup? So what percentage of your revenue, like right now, is coming from, can you say, I don't know if you can, is coming from the US government, is coming from the Aussie government, is potentially coming from NATO? What does that look like now? And what would that look like maybe, say, in 5 years' time?
US is majority of our revenues. So last year it was approximately 2/3 of our revenues, and that's both for US itself and what US buys for military aid to other countries. Australia is our home, and that remains a meaningful source of our revenues as well. But then Europe, I believe, will become increasing source. We have just put our first on the ground sales guy a couple of months ago and rapidly growing that sales team. The way DroneShield sells is through a combination of highly capable senior sales guys as well as in-country distributors who are representing our brand to their trusted customers. And then very interestingly, what we mentioned in our quarterly report that we revealed this week is significant rise in demand in Asia Pacific. So we're seeing a number of countries in the region, such as Singapore, Vietnam, Taiwan, South Korea, Japan, seeing those drone threats and looking to roll out large counter-drone programs to address them. Now, we know these customers. We've been selling to them in much smaller amounts over the last couple of years, and now we're seeing significant demand. Interestingly, when you sell to the militaries, unlike a lot of other government contracting, not a lot is tendered because you have exemptions for national security reasons. So, for example, if you are Singapore government and you say, okay, I'm going to release a tender that says I want a drone detection system with a 5-kilometer range, and your enemy reads it, they'll say, okay, well, that means I'm safe if I'm 6 kilometers away. So for that reason, they don't do it. And instead they work with individual suppliers like DroneShield and then award you contracts on sole source basis, which means the relationships we have are pretty crucial. And then it's up to us to continue driving development of the tech, those relationships, and complete the contracts with customers.
Right. So they're not ongoing contracts.
Most of our work is one-off projects. However, militaries don't tend to go and do wide shop rounds every single time. So it's a bit different to how you and I might be shopping and maybe going to different supermarkets when we feel like getting some food. Instead, militaries are saying, we've spent years evaluating a particular supplier. We want to have transferability in spares, in training, in integration with other systems.
Yep.
So once they tend to pick a supplier, they run with them. So for example, there's only one F-35 Joint Strike Fighter, only one Abrams tank, only one Bradley fighting vehicle. So we believe that DroneShield can be that predominant supplier to a number of our customers around the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we saw that with Lockheed Martin. So they just recently reported their results. And for those that don't know, they're the US's biggest defense contractor. And Oleg, they said that they've got a $160 billion order backlog. That's 2 times their annual revenue, and that's amid unprecedented demand. So you'd think, absolutely, you're playing in the same space, similar somewhat. So can you tell us what is your pipeline? Can you quantify it?
DroneShield has announced this week that we have doubled our pipeline to $1 billion. And this is driven by increasing use of drones on battlefield and customers finally saying they've completed their evaluations and they need to respond to those urgent requirements to protect themselves against those drones. So similar to what you said about Lockheed, we're beneficiaries of unfortunate reality of living in increasingly uncertain time, geopolitics, people realizing that wars and conflict are still a thing. And I think, unfortunately for all of us, things will probably get worse before they get better in terms of war and uncertainty and terrorism.
So you spoke about that $1 billion pipeline. Let's just touch on some of your financial results. So they were very, very positive. What really stood out to you, or what do you think, doing calls with investors, what's the most prominent thing that stands out to you that you're proud of?
Well, we have significant growth in revenues and cash receipts, all-time high records that we announced for the first half of 24. Traditionally, second halves have been stronger for us, and we will be working hard to aim to achieve the same this year. For example, last year, 80% of our revenues came from our second quarter. So those are the key drivers, the pipeline and the record results for the 6 months to date.
All right. I guess, I don't know if I can ask this question, but what are you most excited about? So you said you wake up in the morning, you think about DroneShield. So what is most exciting about DroneShield to you? What's going to happen in the future? 10 years from now, what will the company look like?
We came from being essentially company that grew on very little to no resourcing, Jessica. When we first started, we were raising 1 or 2 million at a time. You exist in a shoestring. You have significant constraints on how quickly you can drive your technology, on how fast you can grow your sales teams. Now we're thankfully in a situation where the company has great amount of resourcing to scale really quickly. So we have roughly doubled our team in the last 12 months, and we are continuing to grow. And also, when we started, customers used to often laugh at us, say, well, small drones are things I buy my kids for Christmas. Why would I possibly want a counter drone system? And now everybody accepts that threat. So the exciting thing for me is we're in a position where the threat is well understood. We have significant amount of resourcing to deal with it. We are well placed in the industry. We have a great brand name. And the biggest threat for us, the biggest challenge, which we actually enjoy dealing with, is the evolution of drone technologies themselves. So we don't necessarily think about competition, but we think about the new developing technologies. For example, now you can buy a $10,000 drone from Chinese companies like Autel that we're seeing include really advanced military electronic warfare techniques, some of which try to avoid detection and takedown by systems like ours. So for us, it's a challenge. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with drones which are now emerging that swim on the surface of the water, that crawl on the ground, that swarm in advanced ways? So pushing that technology to the limit and working with increasingly more sophisticated sales team to sell to the key militaries and also critical infrastructure and other similar users around the world.
Oleg, it's been an absolute pleasure. Is there anything else that we should know about before we let you go?
No, I believe this is it. I mean, the key message for the business is, or for the investors listening to this is, we are at a point of very little market penetration. It's we believe a US $10 billion market, the counter drone market, and the customers are about to start buying in mass. And the question is who they're going to buy from. And DroneShield is doing everything it can to continue being at the lead of this industry.
Absolutely. And we are very much looking forward to following your success very closely. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute honor and a privilege. Oleg, thank you.
Thank you, Jessica.